Vision. You're watching the topical discussion. This one will be focusing more on the state of the nation, but also on what the state of political parties look like. What activities are within the People's Front for Freedom? We are hosting the Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujju-Nganda, who is an interim spokesperson of the PFF. It's a newly registered party. What are they up to as others are moving into the preparations for nominations, as others are moving into the registrations for their different activities? What exactly is inside the People's Front for Freedom? How and what is their view on the current state of the nation? The president addressed the country just days ago. What exactly do they see in the country as key critical issues that ought to have a conversation about? How about the conversation that is calling for president to engage the opposition in a national dialogue? Is that one that they would subscribe to? That will be shaping this conversation this morning. Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujju-Nganda, good morning.
Good morning.
You're welcome to this show. We would like to hear from you, and certainly the population would like to hear from you and understand what and where you see the current state of Uganda in regards to what the president addressed.
First of all, the State of Nation address was engulfed by two subsequent holidays. The Eid on Friday and then this useless Heroes Day yesterday. I think the country was unable to track what the president said because of these 2 days. At a parliamentary level, what the president presents is usually an aggregate from all government departments. Unfortunately for the country, Museveni tends to speak more about history than the current state of affairs. So he likes judging himself against the failures of the government. But 40 years into power, you can only judge yourself against yourself. You can no longer judge yourself against Milton Obote. You can't judge yourself against Idi Amin. So Museveni now should be judging himself against himself. But he begins with history. So there are documents that I want to encourage everybody to read if you want to understand where Uganda is. The population, the National Population and Census Report is one such a document that tells you where Uganda is today. And then there are several other documents. Recently I was reading, and I will make a reference to it if you allow, the Financial Capability Survey by Bank of Uganda. Let me begin with the figures in the National Population Census. Uganda has a population of 45.9 million people. 25 million of those, according to the Labour Policy 2011, are supposed to be working. 25 million. Only 9 have some form of employment, and I want to emphasize the word some form of employment out of 25, which means you have 16 million people who are not working. But even these ones who are working, because when Museveni is giving figures, he gives you global figures without telling you which work they are doing. I am in a constituency that has a number of industrial industries, from Azam to Daring to people earn 7,000 a day. The Bank of Uganda Financial Capability Report tells you that of the 9 million people who are working, less than 1% earn $1 million and above. Less than 1%.
What does that report describe some form of employment as?
People who go to Azam in the morning are about 3,000. They do all sorts of jobs. I have a company that is selling artificial hair in my constituency. So the women who work there every day are just sorting those artificial hair and are given 7,000. But when Museveni is reporting to the country, he will tell you that about 1 million people, 700,000 are working in factories. That's what he will tell you. He will not go into the details of what they are doing in those factories. You need to come to Weyogerere in the morning and see the queues streaming into Azam, streaming into Daring, and other factories that are there, earning 7,000 a day. The Bank of Uganda Financial Capability Report says 40% of those people who are working, the 9 million, earn 150,000 a month and below. So if you want to look at Uganda, let me use another statistics that is the population census report. We have people who have degrees in Uganda. They are 600,000. This economy of Uganda does not have jobs for 500,000 people with degrees, just 500,000. Those are the people who have degrees. People who
600,000 only have degrees, but universities have about 700,000 every year.
No. I think Bakere has the highest number. They admit about 10,000 a year. So since independence, people who have degrees in Uganda are 600,000. Those with the certificate are 400,000. Those with the diploma are also about 600,000. So in total, people who have some qualification from certificate to diploma to degrees are 1.7 million in a population of 45.9 million people. But even those small as they look, the economy doesn't have jobs for all of them, and you know it, Shamim, you are a journalist. They are in the Middle East working as maids with their degrees from Makerere, from Chambogo, from wherever. So an economy that cannot employ, that does not have 2 million formal jobs, and it is easy to establish. Government employees, if you look at the Auditor General did the head count of government staff, civil service, they were less than 400,000, but you can average them and say 400,000. Those are the jobs in the government. If you want the formal jobs, they are properly captured by NSSF, because it is by law that if you have a formal job, they will submit your NSSF to the National Social Security Fund. In NSSF, on their register, they have about 2 million people, but monthly contributions average between 700 and 8,000. So those are the people who are in formal employment. When you add the one of government, so that's the Uganda's economy. That's the state of Uganda.
One would expect that there could be some kind of growth to it if we are to speak about the employment levels or even the creation of jobs. In this running financial one that is closing, government said it would create about 845,000 jobs. What does the Treasury memoranda say? Has it been brought to you?
Of course, because you speak to an audience that doesn't follow, but also that doesn't have access to all these documents, but even when they have access, they don't read them. You've been in Parliament. I read these figures that are in official government books, and even MPs are surprised, but each one has a copy. They don't read them, either they don't understand them. So that's just one aspect of the economy as Museveni has built it. People don't go to acquire degrees to go and sell jeans in Chikubo. That's not the reason they go to Makerere and Chambogo and other universities. But that's the sad reality of Uganda. 62% of the population is in agriculture. 62% is in agriculture. We are only 2% of those who are in agriculture are involved in irrigation. We are still depending on nature rainfall. This country endowed because we have the highest amount of rainfall, water sources. In Uganda, you cannot drive 50 kilometers, 50 miles, and you don't find a water body. But only 2% of the 62 who are in agriculture are doing irrigation. The rest depend on nature. In this budget,
and then you sit where planning happens.
Yeah, my hands are tied. My hands are tied. I have made all these recommendations. Unfortunately, the Parliament is full of NRM MPs.
And you want to say they don't understand the fact that they come from populations, communities that are agriculture-based?
I represent an urban area. In this year's budget, which Museveni will be presenting on Thursday, there was a proposal by the Minister of Agriculture to buy tractors at 300 billion shilling. Museveni put only 60 billion.
Even in this current budget, about 50 billion shillings to tractors.
Yes, when I made noise, The NRM MPs who had the opportunity to vote no, they were only shaking my hand in the corridor after voting yes. Stupid idiots. That you have a proposal to buy tractors for your own constituencies. I include in the minority report. You vote for 50 billion that Museveni has provided instead of 300 billion. And then I highlight it in my report, and all that you do is to shake my hand as we are walking out of Parliament. That same, thank you very much. It was a very good report. So that's a trouble. The mental capacity and the courage of our leaders. So 62% of the population is in agriculture. Only you are doing irrigation at only 2%. But you have markets in the Middle East. I was in Dubai recently. They have now started labeling Kenyan mangoes, because in Dubai, every year Pakistan alone exports mangoes to Dubai, $100 million US, just mangoes alone. Now Kenya has entered that market. You go to a supermarket in Dubai and they will tell you these are Kenyan mangoes because they are better than sometimes Pakistan. We have capacity to do agriculture because that's where the biggest proportion of the population is. When Museveni comes, he's going to be speaking about export. Now milk to Algeria, now this. Even when America opened doors and we went to Bugoro where they were recruiting virgins under, I've forgotten the Kananathan. The American market was open for Uganda, but we had nothing to export. That's why at the end of the day, financing of the budget itself is going to be heavily through borrowing. Because you have a budget of 72 trillion, you're going to borrow about 30, because they use a formula that finance has provided, which is 40-60. That 60 should be URA taxes, but we never get those taxes because next financial year, the projection is that we will correct. I think now they have gone to 36. 37. And then the rest of the money is borrowing from outside and from banks that are owned by foreigners. Because if you borrow from Stanbic,
domestic banks,
at the end of the day, they call them domestic because they are registered here, but they are foreign owned. It's like saying MTN is a Ugandan company. Certainly, you know, it is not, it's only resident in Uganda. So when you borrow from Stanbic Bank, it means, because this financial year we have budgeted for 11 trillion interest payment, it means the South Africans who have brought some money here, they will just collect 11 trillion in interest and return home. So the education, health, agriculture, there is no sector where worth reporting that the country, and I want to advise, I saw on your screen they have put FDC. I am no longer FDC, I am PFF. So please let nobody call me FDC. I left that party long ago. So in all sectors you have problems. And these problems is what I presented to Parliament. Because in the budget of this next financial year, which starts next month, that Museveni will present to Parliament, you have 27 trillion, which is for debt servicing.
Yes.
You have 8.6 trillion wages for the 400,000 people working in the government, including us MPs. And then you have another about 4 trillion, which is for fuel, for workshops, for entertainment, special meals, etc. You are spending about 12 trillion, which is 16% of the budget, on 500,000 people. The rest of the money is for debt servicing. Look, in the road sector, the last time Katumba Amara made a presentation, I think it was made by Musa Echeru, the deputy, you have about 4 trillion in the budget, and you will see Museveni presenting roads that are going to be done. I think Museveni likes drama, because contractors had abandoned sites, all of them, by January this year, because government owes them 1.7 trillion. So the money in the budget is actually to mobilize contractors to return to work. But Museveni is going to present it as new, then he will put a list of roads to be done, including roads where they are going to do visibility studies. Look, we have borrowed money to do roads, and I'll give you one specific one. the Ginger Expressway Southern Bypass that starts at Munyonyo, comes to Nambola, and then goes to Ginger. We borrowed over $300 million US from African Women Bank 2 years ago. Construction of that road cannot start. Why? Because we don't have money to compensate people in the passage. So even what Museveni reads, it will excite people. But if you read all these documents and you put them together, you will know that our president likes drama. He will put, you're going to do Ginger Expressway. Because there was a study, the amount of time we spent in traffic jam, moving between where you get in Chirinya, where I stay coming to town, and I spend 1 hour and a half. The country loses 1 trillion shilling in a year in traffic jam. Because if you stay in Mukono, which is a distance of less than 20 kilometers, and you work in Kampala, either you wake up at 5 or you spend 2 hours. You can just imagine 2 hours of work between Mukono and Kampala, and then 2 hours in the evening between Kampala and Mukono. So productive time is spent just traveling on bad roads, very narrow roads. And then, as I said, you are spending 12 trillion shilling on a few government employees, these ones who are staying in Nigeria. Each one has a 5,000 cc vehicle. It stays in Nigeria. In a year, we are spending 960 billion on fueling these vehicles. So we are a country of luxury. And I think the president, and I can understand because he's of old age, he went to sleep without notifying the country. So the state of nation as presented by Museveni is just a wish list. But the concrete measures to change the situation on the ground are neither in budget reports, are neither in policy statements, are they in his speech. They are not there.
Are we just from the economics that you are speaking about, that you say the president does not seem to bring it out how it's supposed to be? The president also talks about what the political environment and the state of security is in the country. And part of the problem that he has to deal with are probably individuals like yourself or activists like many others who continue to bring challenges to Uganda, challenges that are undermining security. I don't know how we would want him to report on that.
The trouble is that Museveni and many other people tend to mix the security of the regime and the security of the country. There has been a lot of investment in securing the regime and less investment in securing the country. That's why you see Museveni lamenting that theft of cattle and matoke is rampant. Recently, because sometimes he also acts impulsively. So when he was at Harare and they told him they are stealing our cows and matoke, he said, now I want a police station at every parish. And then he mobilized policemen in Kampala to go to parishes, as if...
It's at sub-county.
At sub-county. We have cameras. I had someone whose vehicle was stolen in Nsasa, in my constituency. His home is near a camera. So I asked fellows who are running the cameras, can you show us who was moving? And they said at that time the camera was not on. So the security of the regime, the security of Museveni's administration, he has invested heavily through ISO, RDCs, including the military, including appointing his own son, not to grow the military, but to secure the regime. But the security of the country, there is less investment. And that's why I think the day the security of the regime crumbles, even the security of the country will crumble. And that will happen because it has happened to everybody. I think Gaddafi invested heavily in securing himself in power. So are all these African strong men. But the moment the investment is in securing you, securing the administration, the day that administration becomes weak, everything is going to disintegrate. So choosing the opposition, and that's why I said it is security of the regime. They focus less on crimes and focus more on the opposition and what they are doing. In all the constituencies, you can ask MPs, the DPCs, the ISO, right now they are all on alert because of the election, as if politics is a crime. They are all on alert. The other day we had a meeting at Katonga, PFF meeting. At the end of the meeting, we had been surrounded by police and military. Why? They saw 6, and they were from my constituency. They had put on overall with my picture. So at the end of the meeting, they are all rounded, they remove the overalls as if putting on an overall is a crime. And they told me those overalls are now at CPS in the political desk, political crime desk. They even have a political crime desk. I am not sure that they have other desks to deal with theft of cows and matoka, as Museveni was saying. But that's the mentality. That's how they have tuned the security people. They look at Katonga, at NUP headquarters and all our offices as crime scene. Even when there is nobody, you have worked in the evening, gone home, they will deploy people in the morning. So the security that Museveni speaks about is security of the regime, not security of the country.
So in the simplest terms, if you were to report, like the president did report, and you had to report on where the state of the nation is, in the simplest terms, what would you describe it as?
If you read both the Bank of Uganda, because they have an economic report, I think, quarterly, in all these reports, they are telling you we are at the edge. We're a country that is financed by borrowing, but we have reached a peak because borrowing now, they keep computing and recomputing to present a rosy picture that actually we are not highly indebted. But if you look at the figures provided by themselves, because sometimes on page 1 they will give you a different figure, and then on page 10 they will give you a different figure. We are now at 52% of our GDP, which they also keep recomputing. I saw this week they say now our GDP is 220 something trillion. At one time they will give it to you as 196. So when you are doing these figures of NRM, you have to have a calculator in your pocket because they keep changing by hour. But going by any of the figures, we have now borrowed and mortgaged ourselves up to 52% of our GDP.
Okay.
So the moment you are financing, because if you look at in the budget itself, I'll give you an example. I need to look at the local government again, because the last financial year, this financial year we are completing, the allocation to local government, all these districts in Uganda was 6 trillion, but 5.4 trillion was money for salaries for teachers of primary and secondary. And so at the end of the day,
it's just one of those that we have to pay attention to. But so we'll continue that conversation just shortly. We'll take a very short break, but when we come back, we shall be getting into the allocations that the Honorable Ibrahim Ssemujungana speaks about on that.